You are worth $650 million. And right now, you are standing at a hardware store counter, counting out 37 cents for a box of nails. A quarter, a dime, 2 pennies. Not because you need to, not because money is tight, but because if you ever stop acting like an ordinary man, someone might finally notice what you own. That sounds impossible until you understand the rule you learned 30 years ago. The richest man in the room is not always the one everyone looks at. Sometimes he is the one they forget before he reaches the door. It is 1950. There is no public scoreboard for men like you. No clean ranking. No easy way for the world to add up the farms, mineral rights, laundries, bonds, and companies hidden behind other companies. So you can be the wealthiest man for 200 miles in any direction and still walk out of this store as nobody at all. The question is how. The stranger question is why you would want to. To answer both, you have to go back 30 years, to $4.17 in a coffee tin, and the morning you noticed a woman getting paid for doing absolutely nothing. Rewind. 1920. You are 28. There is $4.17 folded inside a coffee tin with a red paper label on a shelf above a sink with one cold tap. That is everything you own that isn't on your body. You're a roughneck on a wildcat rig in the East Texas brush. $5.50 on a good day. Nothing on a day it rains and the lease turns to black mud. Your boots are cracked across the toe and you've patched them with a strip of inner tube because new boots are $4 and new boots are not happening. Here's the trap, and nobody warns you about it because nobody around you can see it either. Your whole life is already drawn out in front of you like a rail line. You pull pipe until your back goes. Then you do something easier for less money. Then you're old. Nobody chose that for you. It was just there, the way the heat was there. So you wait for the thing that's supposed to save men like you? The gusher, the lucky strike that turns a roughneck into a king overnight. Every man on the rig is waiting for it. It's the only future any of them can picture. They aren't stupid. They are looking very hard at exactly the wrong thing. You will never get the gusher. And that turns out to be the luckiest thing that ever happens to you. Because while they're all staring up at the derrick, you're about to look the other way, at a porch a half-mile off, and notice the thing that quietly ends one life and starts another. Ownership beats labor. There's a widow who owns the land your rig stands on. Mrs. Prather. 70 years old, same brown dress to town every Saturday. She has never once set foot on the lease. And every month, a man in a clean shirt drives out and hands her a check. You see it by accident, walking the fence at the end of a shift. She's holding the check up to the light, and you hear her say, plain as day, "This more than last month." And the man says, "Well's flowing good, ma'am." She did nothing. Broke nothing, lifted nothing, ruined no part of her body. She owns the dirt. And for owning the dirt, she gets a slice of everything that comes up out of it, forever, while you destroy your hands for $5.50 a day standing on top of it. Every other man on that rig wants the same one thing. Find the oil. Be the one whose drill hits it. Be the hero of the strike everyone talks about in the bunkhouse. You stand at that fence and you want something smaller and stranger, and it reorganizes your entire life around a single question. Who owns the dirt the next field over? You don't say it to anyone. You've already learned the thing you couldn't yet explain, that the thoughts worth having are the ones you keep. The men around you are racing to be the one who finds the wealth. You've quietly stopped wanting to find anything. You'd rather be the old woman on the porch. You'd rather have the check that comes whether you show up or not, whether you're young or finished, above the ground or under it. Almost no poor man ever does it. He spends his whole life trying to earn his way out and never once asks who owns the thing he's earning on top of. It takes you 11 months of beans and patched boots to find out what that question costs to answer. And the first answer is going to feel like a joke told at your own expense. Recurring money beats wages. You find a played-out lease 2 counties over that nobody wants. You don't buy the oil. You buy a sliver of the mineral rights underneath it, the right to a tiny cut of anything that ever comes up. $340. Every cent you have, plus 40 you borrow at an interest rate you're ashamed of. 3 months later, the first check arrives. You open it standing in the road in the dark before your shift so nobody sees. $6.20. That same week, a man on your crew brings home an overtime check for $41 and buys a round for the whole bunkhouse. He's flush. He's grinning. He stands everyone a drink, and for one night he is the richest man in the room, and every man in it knows his name. You sit in the corner with your $6.20 and say nothing. You don't say what you're thinking. What you're thinking is that by the only math your crew understands, you lost. You scrimped 11 months for a check that won't cover his bar tab, and he's not wrong to celebrate. He earned every dollar of it with his back. You just earned something different, and the difference is the whole game. His $41 happened once. He had to bleed for it, and the day he stops bleeding, it stops cold. Your $6.20 happened while you were asleep, and it's coming again next month whether you're on the rig or in the ground. His check is a wage. Yours is a small machine. And the machine doesn't care if you're tired or sick or done. The wage is the biggest number most men will ever see, and it dies the second they stop moving. The machine is the smallest number you'll ever be ashamed of, and it never stops. You found a door in a wall you've leaned against your whole life. You haven't gone through it. You've just felt the seam of it under your hand in the dark. And then the floor falls out from under the entire state of Texas. The crash proves the gusher is fragile. It's 1931. The biggest oil field anyone has ever seen comes in. And instead of making everyone rich, it drowns them. There's so much oil the price collapses. $1 a barrel becomes 13 cents. Then a dime. Then, some days, a nickel, when you can sell it at all. The men who 6 months ago were kings, who measured their whole worth in barrels and borrowed against every one of them, are selling their rigs for the price of the steel. The gusher, the thing every man on every rig spent his life praying for, turns out to be the most fragile fortune there is. It is wealth you don't control, priced by a market that can cut it to a nickel overnight and never ask your permission. And your machine gets tested too. Your royalty checks, 10 years of patient, boring work, shrivel toward nothing. 1 month a check comes in at 0 with a note. So you go back. 39 years old, you put the cracked boots on again, you still have them, and you take a wage job on a rig. You fix a pump on the back of a truck by headlight because the well can't wait for morning. You're as tired as you were at 28, and for a long stretch you think you imagined the whole door in the wall. You don't quit. Not because you're brave, because you have nothing else and nowhere else to put the wanting. And the boom kings never lived to learn why they were destroyed and you were only bruised. The difference isn't luck. They were the gusher. Every dollar they had was the same barrel of oil, rising and falling as one. You owned a sliver of 1,000 different holes, and you never borrowed your life against the price of any of them. The machine bent. It did not break. You don't yet have the word for why you survived, and they didn't. You're about to learn it standing in a slow line at a county tax office. The tax code proves ownership is the real business. The man ahead of you in that line is a famous wildcatter. Flashy. Chased the biggest gushers, drilled deep and loud, bought a Cadillac the week a well came in. The crash took him to the studs. And here's the part that rearranges your head while you stand there waiting. He had the oil. More oil than you will ever own in your life. And the oil is exactly what killed him, because he'd borrowed money against every barrel, and the barrels are suddenly worth a dime. He chased the thing your whole crew prayed for, he caught it, and it ate him alive. He had the gusher. You had something he never once thought was worth having. Standing in that line, you finally understand what it is. It's one line in the tax code. The government will pay you to own a hole in the ground, not to dig it, to own it. Every year you get to deduct a fat slice of whatever that well earns, tax-free, long after you've already made your money back. 27.5 cents on every dollar, sheltered, basically forever, just for being the one whose name is on the dirt. The law doesn't reward the man who breaks his back over the well. It rewards the man who owns it. And it lands on you all at once. What you've been doing for 10 years without ever having the words for it. You are not in the oil business. The oil business is the thing that just bankrupted the man in front of you. You are in the business of owning the thing the law rewards for simply existing. The oil is the excuse. A man who owns the dirt and the deduction can sit through any crash, owe almost nothing, and wait, while the man who chased the gusher is sold off for parts in the back of a courthouse. And that's what turns a clever idea into an unkillable one. The law itself is on the side of the owner. You don't need the biggest well. You need to own the dirt under 1,000 small ones and let one line in the tax code do the work 1,000 strongbacks never could. You walk out of that office and you do not buy a Cadillac. You go find the next widow with land nobody wants. And then you start doing the thing that turns a fortune into a permanent one. The thing nobody can ever see you doing. Boring assets prove invisible wealth lasts. The 30s roll into the 40s and you stop being a man who works and become a man who owns. The strange part is how little it looks like anything from the outside. You buy royalties across 4 fields, then 9, then more than you can hold in your head. And then you start moving the money out of oil into things so boring no one would ever look twice. Farmland in 3 states, a laundry, a stake in a company that makes pipe fittings because every rig in Texas needs fittings and nobody writes songs about the man who owns them. Bonds in a stack you genuinely forget the size of. A cotton gin, a second laundry. There's a ladder here, and the rungs aren't measured in dollars. They're measured in how far your hands get from the dirt. In 1920, you stand in the mud and the money comes from your back. By 1935, you sign a paper and it comes from a stranger's back. By 1948, there are things you own and forget you own, until a check arrives and you have to look up the name of the field just to remember buying in. That's the real shape of getting rich, and it's not the one anyone draws. It isn't the number going up. It's your hands getting farther and farther from the dirt, and your fortune getting harder and harder to see. Until one day you own 1,000 acres of it and never have to feel it again, and not one neighbor could tell you what you're worth. By 1949, you've genuinely lost track of how much there is. So you hire a man to add it up. His name is Ackerley, and it takes him 6 weeks. He spreads it across his desk in folders. Royalties, bonds, farms, gins, holding companies stacked inside other holding companies like nesting boxes. He takes off his glasses, rubs his eyes, and is quiet a long time. Then he tells you the number, $650 million. There is a tax rate this year that every visible rich man in America is terrified of. 91 cents of the top dollar gone. It is built for income that shows up shouting its name, money that arrives loud and proud and asks to be counted. You don't have that kind. You have the dirt and the deduction and the boring boxes, and the headline rate never finds you because it only knows how to bite the money that announces itself. The loud fortune feeds the government. The quiet one just keeps compounding in the dark. Then Ackerley says the thing you'll remember the rest of your life. On paper, he says, to the bank, to your neighbors, you're a man of modest means with a great many small interests. None of them remarkable. That is not sloppy bookkeeping. That is the most expensive thing you have ever built. He taps the stack. Any fool with a strike can be rich for a year. You spent 30 years making sure that even when somebody goes looking, the picture never adds up to what it is. The money was the easy part. The disappearing is the art. And sitting there, you finally understand the plain suit and the exact change and the cracked old boots for what they really are. Not modesty. Armor. The boring, scattered, unseeable fortune is the only kind that survives the men and the governments who come for the visible ones. You find out exactly how good that armor is at a party you never wanted to attend. The party proves visible wealth is weak. There's a wildcatter, the kind of man they nickname for his stickpin, who just built a hotel. 14 stories, painted a green you can see for miles, a swimming pool you could float a barge in. He's thrown himself a party to celebrate being exactly as rich as everyone can see he is. And somehow you got invited. You wear the gray suit. You hold one drink all night so no one hands you another. He sweeps through the room shaking hands, and he reaches you, and his eyes do the thing. They start at your face, drop to the suit, no watch, no pin, no shine, and slide right off you to the man behind you who matters more. He shakes your hand without seeing it. He's forgotten he met you before he lets go. And it feels wonderful. Because the moment a man decides you're nobody, he stops keeping track of you. He stops wondering what you have. He stops, ever, coming for it. That's not an insult. It's a moat. And he dug it for you, for free, in front of 400 people. His whole fortune is a billboard, and a billboard tells every banker, every partner, every taxman, and every grasping cousin exactly how much there is to take. 3 years from this party, he'll be bankrupt. The hotel mortgaged, the wells leveraged, the loud fortune undone by the first hard year the way loud fortunes always are. You'll read it in your kitchen and feel nothing in your own holdings, because boring boxes inside boxes don't notice when a man 200 miles away stops being rich. It runs against everything a poor man dreams about. The visible fortune was never the strong one. It was just the one you could see. And being able to see it was exactly what made it weak. By now, you believe the money can wall you off from anything in the world. You're about to learn the exact size of what it can't. And the lesson starts at your own kitchen table, with your own brother. The brother proves being right can cost love. Your younger brother Walter stayed. He stayed in the fields when you started buying dirt. He pulled pipe until his back went, exactly the way the rail line promised it would, and now he's 53, running a feed store that loses a little more every season, $9,000 behind on a note the bank is about to call. He comes to you, sits in your kitchen with his hat in his hands, your own brother in his second-best shirt, and asks, "You could write $9,000 on a slip of paper right now and never feel its absence, not once, for the rest of your life." The bank would vanish. Walter would weep with relief at your table. You don't write the slip. Instead, you do the colder, harder thing. You sit him down, that night and the next week and a dozen nights after. And you teach him what the widow on the porch understood and he never did. The store is a back to break, but the building under it is dirt, and dirt can be owned, and ownership pays whether you're well or sick or sleeping. You restructure the note yourself, quietly, through a third party, so the bank never learns your name is anywhere in it. You hand him the door in the wall instead of dragging him through it. And Walter hates it. Night after night, the pencil scratches and his jaw sets, and you can feel him doing the same math the crew did 30 years ago. The math that says the man across the table has the money and just won't use it. One night he sets the pencil down, looks at you across the same kind of kitchen table you both grew up at and says, "You'd rather give a man homework than help him." He puts on his hat and goes home. He's not entirely wrong. You don't say what you're thinking, which is that a check fixes a month and a skill fixes a life. And you know which one you'd want if you were him, and you know he doesn't want it tonight and may never want it. You're right. The store survives. The building is his. And being right costs you your brother by inches, over years. He never sits easy at your table again. Everything you learned, own it, don't earn it, build the slow thing, was true. It saved the store. And it could not save the one thing you actually wanted, which was him across the table, easy with you, the way it was before there was any money at all. You told yourself refusing the easy way was the kindest thing you could do with all of it. Then came the summer that proved how small even being right really is. Polio proves money cannot buy control. First, a small thing, almost a joke. You decide you want some of the fortune in gold, bars in a vault, the oldest safe thing there is. Ackerley laughs, not unkindly. You can't. It's been a federal crime to own gold bullion since 1933. On this one thing, the richest man in 3 states and the poorest man in the county top out at exactly the same place. $100 in coins, no more. $650 million. And here's a wall it simply cannot climb. You file it away as a curiosity. It will not stay a curiosity. Because that summer, the wall the money can't climb turns out to be the only one that ever mattered. It's 1950. Polio season. It comes every year now, like the heat. The pools close, the picture shows go dark, the mothers keep the children indoors. And this year it will reach into the tens of thousands of homes across the country, rich house and poor house alike, taking them almost at random, and the doctors can only count the children, not stop them. This summer it takes Walter's youngest, your niece. 9 years old, the one who calls you by a name only she uses. Waiting in a creek one Tuesday. Couldn't stand up out of it on Wednesday. You drive to the hospital with $650 million, and in that corridor it is worth nothing. There is no vaccine. There won't be one for 5 more years. A man named Salk is working on it right now, somewhere far from here, and it will come, and it will be one of the great deliverances of the century, and it will arrive 5 years too late for this child. You can't buy it forward. You can't buy what doesn't exist yet. You offer the doctor anything. Specialists, a wing if he wants a wing. And he tells you the plain truth the money has spent 30 years hiding from you. There is nothing to buy. You sit in that corridor next to the brother you wouldn't write the check for, and the two of you are finally exactly equal. In the only way that has ever mattered, which is that neither of you can do a single thing. And you understand what those 30 years were quietly trying to teach you, and what you kept refusing to learn. It was never the number. The most powerful man in the whole country sat through 4 terms in a chair he couldn't rise from, struck down by the same thing that has her in that bed, and all the power and all the money on earth never once got him out of it. Ownership beats labor, and recurring beats wages, and the boring fortune outlasts the loud one. Every word of it is true, and none of it buys you a body that won't fail or a season that won't come. The number is just what you count when you're afraid to count anything else. She lives, not whole. There are braces and a long bad year and a leg that never quite comes all the way back. But one afternoon that fall, you watch her take 11 steps across Walter's front room between 2 chairs, and Walter is crying, and you're standing in the doorway in the gray suit, and nobody in that room is thinking about money, least of all you. And standing there, you finally understand the only thing the fortune was ever really for. And it's the one thing that will never, ever fit inside a folder on Ackerley's desk. So, you are standing at a hardware store counter, counting out 37 cents for a box of nails. The boy slides them across. That do it for you? It does. You carry them out to a truck that's 11 years old and runs fine. You drive home past the bank where your name appears on nothing, past the feed store your brother owns the dirt beneath, past a green hotel 2 counties over that you happen to know is 1 bad year from the auction block. At home, on a shelf above the sink, there's still a coffee tin with a red paper label, faded almost to white. There's no money in it. There hasn't been for 30 years. You keep it because it's the one thing in your life that knows what you actually are, and it has never told anyone, and it never will. The fortune was always the easy part. The disappearing was the art. And you got so good at it that the only people who will ever know the size of what you built are the ones who don't care about the size at all. There's a fence rail loose out back, and a child coming Sunday who's going to want to be carried out to look at the horses, and you'd rather the rail held. So here's the only question left. The one that grows right up out of that loose rail and that faded tin and that long hospital corridor where the money meant nothing. If the number was never the thing, then what were the 30 years for? You think you finally know. You think the answer is the rail, and Sunday, and the 11 steps between the two chairs. But you fix the fence first, and you let the question stand.